Picture someone you know. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe, if you're being honest, it's you. They cancel plans and feel relief, not guilt. They spend an entire weekend inside, no calls, no socializing, and emerge on Monday looking genuinely rested. At parties, they're pleasant, even warm. But the moment they're home, alone, something visibly relaxes in them. Like they've been holding their breath all day and finally exhaled. Most people look at someone like that and assume something is wrong. They call it antisocial. They call it depression. They call it fear. But psychology tells a different story, and it begins much earlier than most people realize. It begins in childhood, in moments so ordinary they were never even noticed. Here's what every child is supposed to learn before they learn anything else: that other people are safe. When a young child feels afraid, they reach for a parent. When they're overwhelmed, they cry not because they've decided to, but because the brain is wired to seek comfort from other humans. This is called proximity-seeking behavior. It's not weakness. It's biology. The nervous system is designed to regulate itself through connection. A child who is scared and then held, soothed, and reassured doesn't just feel better in that moment. Their brain records something far more significant: people are a source of safety. But what happens when the opposite gets recorded instead? What happens when a child reaches out and finds criticism instead of comfort? When vulnerability leads to shame? When asking for help is met with irritation, dismissal, or silence? Nothing dramatic has to happen. There doesn't need to be neglect in the clinical sense. It can be something as subtle as a parent who was emotionally unavailable, not cruel, just absent in the ways that mattered. A house where feelings weren't discussed. A household where strength meant silence. And the child, being a child, draws the only rational conclusion available to them: reaching out is risky. So they adapt. And this adaptation is nothing short of remarkable. Instead of seeking comfort from others, they learn to generate it themselves. Instead of sharing pain, they process it privately, turning it into something they can manage, contain, control. They develop rich inner worlds, elaborate imagination, deep thinking, a capacity for self-reflection that most people never cultivate. From the outside, this child looks fine. More than fine. They look mature, composed, impressively independent for their age. Nobody sees the trade that was made. Because what that child gave up quietly, without any ceremony, was the expectation that other people would show up. They stopped waiting. And in stopping, they found something that never disappointed them: solitude. Solitude was predictable. Solitude asked nothing of them. Solitude never said the wrong thing, never withdrew, never made them feel like too much or not enough. Years pass. The child becomes an adult. And this adaptation, which was once a survival strategy, has by now become something that feels like personality. People say, "You're so independent." And they smile, because they are. But independence can sometimes be a scar wearing a medal. Admired on the surface, aching underneath. And here is the part that almost nobody gets right about these people. They are not misanthropes. They don't dislike people. In fact, many of them love deeply, perhaps more carefully and completely than most, precisely because they don't give that love away carelessly. They enjoy conversation when it goes somewhere real. They notice things about people that others miss. They are often the most perceptive, most loyal, most quietly devoted friends you will ever have. But their nervous system still carries an old message. A message written in childhood, in a language the adult mind has mostly forgotten but the body never unlearned. And that message says, closeness is where you get hurt. Not always, Not intentionally, but often enough that the safest place is still the one you built inside yourself. That's why being around people, even people they love, can feel quietly exhausting in a way they struggle to explain. It's not that the people are bad. It's that the vigilance never fully switches off. Some part of them is always faintly braced. Always waiting, without knowing they're waiting, for the moment it goes wrong. And when they finally close the door, sit in the quiet, and feel themselves relax, that isn't isolation. That's the nervous system coming home. Now here's the question that matters most, and it isn't whether solitude is good or bad. Research in psychology consistently shows that people who are comfortable with solitude tend to score higher in creativity, emotional resilience, and self-awareness. Solitude, chosen freely, is not a wound. Some of the most profound thinkers in human history spent the majority of their lives alone. Solitude, at its best, is where clarity lives. The question is simply this: when you close the door and breathe out, is that peace, or is that relief? Because peace is something you've built. Relief is something you've escaped to. And the difference between those two things can reveal more about the child you once were than any memory ever could. The people who prefer being alone are not broken. They are not damaged. They are people who, at some point very early in life, learn to become their own safe place. And that is one of the most quietly extraordinary things a human being can do. But now I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it before you answer. When you are alone, truly alone, with no screen and no noise, what do you feel first? Is it peace? Or is it something older than that?